Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Poz. With me today, very special returning guest, a IWC pillar. Basically, kind of created the community. If you kind of really think about it, he's a historian. He's of course an author. He is the man behind Way of the Blade, the AEW edition, Mr. Phil Schneider. Phil, welcome in. How you doing?
Great to be back, John. Thanks for having me.
So what's going on in your world? What's going on with AEW? Technically, the edition of the Way of the Blade, but you might even call it Way of the Blade 2.
So it's similar to the first book in a lot of ways. Whereas I've got sort of writing about bloody wrestling and specifically about the bloody wrestling of AEW. We've got art from Chris Bryan, who did the great art in the first book, and he incredible drawings in this one too. Even altered the style a little bit, still very clearly him, but even tried some different things in the art. And then in addition to that, I was able to do a lot of interviews for this book. So I was able to talk to Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson and Eddie Kingston and MJF and Darby Allin and Tony Khan and Britt Baker. I mean, a ton of different people, and get sort of their thoughts about the matches that they were in. So in some ways, I think it serves almost as like an oral history of AEW, because we start with matches from the very first show up until, relatively recently. So I think it sort of it does that as well as, doing the previous thing, which is me, sort of riffing on pro wrestling and through the lens of bloody wrestling. So it's a cool book. It was a lot of fun to do. Since we talked last, I've had a lot of opportunities to do a lot of writing on big platforms, and I've gotten, I think, putting in those reps, writing for The Ringer, writing for GQ, writing for Yahoo Sports now. So I think my writing's gotten better because I've had to, really sort of professionalize it a little bit, as it's become less of, be BSing my way out of Death Valley Driver issue or a Scooter Kaida page. So I think my writing's improved, and I think I've gotten pretty good at interviewing people, which isn't something that I ever did before recently. But I've had lots of chances over the course of working for those, places to do interviews, and I got to do a lot of cool interviews for this book, and I think that really something that kind of adds to it too.
That's great. Like a little additional piece that you can kind of add on. You can talk about the match, you can talk about how great it is, but to actually get the guy's opinion on it and get the guys talking about it, that's a whole new ballgame. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think, especially Moxley and Danielson really, really go pretty in depth to about how they put together a wrestling match and how they think about the structure of a match, how they think about their careers. Both those guys really, in ways that I've never seen either of them talk about anyplace else, or really wrestlers talk about. So I think you really get a real insight into those two guys, especially. I mean, great insight into other people too, but Moxley and Danielson both really kind of, gave me some really, really great quotes, and there's some really, really good stuff. There's the stuff on the first Hangman Texas Death Match, which is in the book, I think is really interesting to read with the most recent one, with the context of what the most recent one is, how Moxley thought about that match and how he kind of approaches deathmatch wrestling. So that's really, I was really happy. I wasn't, a little when John Snowden suggested adding that to the book. I was like, I don't know how that's going to come off, but I was really, really pleased with how forthcoming everybody was when I was talking to her, and how I was able to really get some juicy stuff out of folks.
John's always want to be adding stuff to books. Do you ever notice that? He always wants to add. He's never happy with it.
No, I was talking to some folks about their podcast. They talked about one of the things they liked a lot in the book is that I do these sort of side quests where I talked about like a Jay Briscoe match, the Briscoe match and the FTR match, dog collar match in the book, and then I'll talk about here's some other great dog collar matches, or here are some other really great Jay Briscoe matches. And they were talking about how much they liked that, and they asked whether that was part of the book. Initially, I was like, no, that was John saying it wasn't long enough, and making me write another fucking making me write a shit ton more when I thought I was done with this book. I thought it was finished, and then he was like, "No, actually, you should add 25 pages of text to it." I was like, "All right, fine."
Yes. Oh, that is so him. He just when you think you're happy with it, it's like, no, I want this, and this. Yes, so true. Man, there are a lot of like great, obviously, Way of the Blade One showed a lot of the great bloody matches. What made you think AEW should be the focus this time around? Because I mean, there's a lot to cover, obviously, with AEW. But what made you kind of steer in that direction?
Well, we thought partially we thought it would sell well because it's it's less of a niche than me talking about 1950s French wrestling. So yes, I think that like it's a little under the hood. We thought, oh well, let's try to make this a little more streaming. Who knows if that's actually going to be true or not? Maybe, but also it's like there wasn't bloody wrestling in America really, or in the world. It was something that was kind of had really kind of died off. Right? You didn't have bleeding in New Japan anymore. You didn't have bleeding in the WWE anymore. You didn't have bleeding in CMLL anymore. Right? You just did I mean, you still had it on the indies, and you still had it in the sort of in Mexico and sort of smaller promotions. But on any sort of mainstream scale, it was dead. It was gone. It was a thing in the past. And AEW, basically brought it back from the dead, and had a really bloody couple of really bloody matches on their first big pay-per-view, and then had Joey Janela, Jon Moxley do like a death match. That was like a couple weeks into the history of that promotion, and so I thought it would be an interesting lens to look at it, because now you do have something like CM Punk, Drew McIntyre in the WWE, right, or the angle where Rock busted open Cody Rhodes. I mean, they brought it back, and New Japan has had a lot of blood on their shows lately. CMLL still isn't doing it, but they kind of brought it. AEW kind of brought this part of wrestling back, so I thought it was an interesting thing to look at how they did that.
And boy, I mean, do they blood and guts? I mean, there's Anarchy in the Arena. They always have blood. I mean, any Moxley match, even if it's a 5-minute TV match, I mean, there's going to be blood in AEW.
Although Moxley kind of cut that out for a while. I mean, really brought it back for the big matches, but you'd see the TV stuff the last couple of years. He wasn't doing as much blood. I think he sort of purposely decided. But he said something about this in the book. It's like, look, if people are throwing elbows and punches and in a fight, somebody's going to cut their eyebrow. I mean, it's not that. Doesn't it a lot less realistic to have people doing all this? Go through like a Texas or like a last man standing match in the WWE where they're hitting each other with chairs and nobody bleeds. And with Hell in the Cell and nobody bleeds. War games and nobody bleeds. That's not a realistic way a fight's going to look. It's got to get cut if they're getting smashed into a steel cage in a way that's realistic. So the cartoony part of it was almost like that you wouldn't have this in situations that you would expect to. So that was kind of, he talked about that in the book, and I kind of agree with him. Yeah, it
kind of makes sense. Yeah,
especially somebody, if you imagine kayfabe, a guy like Moxley who's bled a lot in his career, that those scar tissues open up, right?
Yeah, that's true. Does make sense. He's probably right to a certain degree. Kind of joking that obviously he could do it all the time. He definitely has cut back, but in the big matches, even you might have to do another edition with All In. He did it again. There's a ton of blood in that match.
Yeah, I think I'm percolating away in the Blade 3, but I'm thinking I'm going to go back to the old format. I'll just stick it in amongst the new Roddy Piper Buzz Sawyer match that just got released in the WWE Vault. I got some other things to talk about that I didn't talk about in one that I want to talk about in book 3. But yeah, no, I mean I got a spreadsheet of matches for Way of the Blade 3. That Texas Death Match main event All In is on the spreadsheet for sure. Hollywood Ending. I mean, I finished writing this book before Hollywood Ending happened. That match would have been perfect for the book. They keep doing it. I mean, they keep bleeding. I was at Double or Nothing, and I loved the stretcher match. Briscoe Ricochet, I thought was my favorite thing on that pay-per-view, and that was definitely a match that would have fit really well into this book.
Yeah, they keep putting them out there for you. You're going to have to keep making additions.
That was the problem with the book. I was done, and then it it was like, well, we got to put in the Sting retirement match. Got to put in this, How can I
Yes.
not write about Hangman Page, Swerve Strickland, Texas Death? I'm not going to write about this in this book. So it's like I kept tacking shit on at the end of the book after I would, like I said, ostensibly finish writing it.
True. And you're right. If you do Way to Blade 3, you're going to have to spread it out because the Vault, that's awesome. They released that Piper
Watch that
Sawyer
match.
match. Yes, good stuff. I love when they release stuff like that.
That was by far the thing I was most excited about. Everybody's like, wow, we're gonna watch Evolution or All In or ROH or Saturday's Main Event. I was like, Piper Sawyer is number one on those with a bullet. Then I guess we'll see what I want to watch from these other shows. But what I really want to see, it's like the number one most anticipated thing is definitely Piper Sawyer. Number two is probably Tommy Rich, Bill Irwin, bullwhip on a pole. Then maybe Moxley.
Did you know that was on the card? Because I only saw the picture of the Omni thing. I didn't know what the card was. I didn't even look it up. Did you know that was on there?
I looked it up immediately. That was like the first thing I did.
Oh, okay.
I jumped on Cage Match in 30 seconds, and then there was some question because they initially had the wrong date. So it was like, wow, so this is actually going to be right here, or we're going to get this Piper. It was weird, the Piper Sawyer thing. On Cage Match, it was listed as a dog collar in a cage match. Like that was how it was listed. So people thought it was going to be a dog collar in a cage. But I don't know. But nobody actually could figure out why anybody thought it was that. Like it was like one of those things.
Yeah,
like,
that's weird.
Like that wasn't. None of the people had like some of the Georgia TV setting it up. They weren't mentioning a cage in the setup, and then it was like turned out not to be in the cage and just a regular dog collar match. Of course, probably actually better that it was just a regular dog collar match rather than dog collar in a cage. Which I don't ever actually know if ever that as a match that ever actually happened anywhere. I don't know if anybody's ever actually run a dog collar in a cage match.
Do you think it was better than Piper Valentine, the dog collar match?
No, it was. We did an emergency Way of the Blade pod right after that show happened. So me and Eric Ritz talked about that. I think it's. I like to think of things in tiers rather than necessarily rating them. So I think that's in the top tier of dog collar matches, and I think along with Piper Valentine is in that tier. I think the FTR Briscoes match is in that tier, and this is incredibly biased of me, but I would put Demas Mad Dog Connolly from Dean 1 in that tier too. But again, that's like me saying that my kids or my son's performance of Caravan at his talent show was the best 8-year-old singing I've ever seen. I mean, I can't be objective on a show I promoted, but I would say that those matches are all in the top tier of dog collar matches. Those four. How you're going to rate them 1, 2, 3, 4? I'm not sure, but I certainly wasn't disappointed. The Piper Valentine is kind of a shitty ending. This ending was better. That's the thing about the Piper Valentine match is like that. The finish isn't great. It's just kind of, I think it's like Valentine getting yanked off the top rope and then he gets pinned. So this match had a better finish. I think probably Piper Valentine was a little better, but same tier.
I actually love Punk MJF. I know it's in the book and you talk about it. I love that one as well.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. I put it a little lower. I think it was a little long. I think your dog collar window for a dog collar match should be 8 to 12 minutes. You know what I mean? Once you start getting into like 20, 25 minutes, a little bloated would be my one thought about Punk. MJF, I actually think their TV match was the best match those guys had against each other.
Yes.
But that wasn't, they didn't have any blood in it. But I thought that was their best match against each other. That was a fun view. Punk Raven's really good too.
Was there for that one. Yep.
That's a great match. That's a great dog collar match. I mean, my guy Mad Dog Connolly is he's running them twice a month now, and that guy's so we had one at Dean 3 or Dean 2, him against Adam Priest. I thought was really good too. But like again, we book him. We try to keep him around the 10 to 12 minute mark. I think is the sweet spot.
man, if you look at it, right, with the not only dog collar match, but the blood matches and AEW and kind of what they're doing, it is something different, or maybe something we haven't seen in a while. Tony Khan, he loves the sickos, and the sickos love. You know what I mean? It fits into the whole vibe of AEW, right? I mean, it wouldn't be AEW if you didn't have some blood mixed in there with some of these matches.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Tony's a big fan of old wrestling. He's a encyclopedia when it comes to that kind of stuff. If you'd be. I've had some I talked to him obviously for the book. He kind of did some interviews for that. I've had him on Way of the Blade a couple times. We co-promoted Dean 2 in Arizona together.
Yep.
Co-promoting Dean 3 in Philadelphia in September together. So I got to know him pretty well. And that guy's legitimate when it comes to being like a real hardcore lunatic fan of pro wrestling. Like that isn't artifice. The guy, he's as big a freak as any, as me or you or like that. He's bona fide. Believe me. I mean, we were talking about. I was talking to him briefly. I was talking backstage before we were setting up Dean 2, and I'd mentioned that because I was going to Double or Nothing the next night because we were promoting the show before that, and I mentioned that it was the first pay-per-view I had been to since Starrcade '97. The last time I went to a pay-per-view.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I don't like the pay-per-view. I'm like a guy who likes a club show, man. I'm not a guy who likes arena rock. So it's like I'd rather go see like an indie show or something like that than see necessarily a big pay-per-view. I've been to one since Starrcade '97, and then he immediately started talking about how much he loved the finish of the 6-man tag in that show. It's like, that finish of that 6-man tag was really good. I love that finish, and they started describing point by point this finish from this match. 30 years ago, and how he liked that, and then he was like, saying, "Oh man, we should maybe use that finish for a similar finish for this match tomorrow night," and so he's somebody who can. You mentioned Starrcade '97, and he starts immediately talking about how much he loved the finish of a match, 5th from the card. I was at that show. I didn't remember that fucking finish. I was live. I was in the crowd. I didn't really remember that match happened. My big memory from Starrcade '97 was how they had like all the wrestlers were in the crowd for the big Sting win, and you just looked around and I was watching Eric Bischoff wrestle Larry Zbyszko, and while in the audience was like the greatest collection of pro wrestling talent and pro wrestling history, right? It's like there's Steve Regal and Fit Finlay and El Dandy and La Parka, and it's just like they're all just in the audience watching fucking Eric Bischoff do fake karate. I'm like, oh my God. You can grab any 6 guys from this audience and put on a fucking better match list. They didn't have Harlem Heat was in the audience, and the show was in Washington, D.C. The crowd was probably 60% black. Harlem Heat, by far the most over people on that show. They weren't on the card.
That's crazy. I thought for a second you were going to say he liked the finish of Sting Hogan there. I was going to say, oh my God, he can't like that finish. That was brutal.
Not that finish. I think it was like a 6-man with the Steiners and
and Ray Traylor in the NWO. Yeah. Surprised you like that too. That wasn't that great of a match. Although Macho Man was in it though, surprisingly.
Yeah. Tony Big Macho Man fan.
Yeah, he must be. But you definitely did not like to finish the Sting Hogan, did you?
No, of course not. It was horrible. I did not like that show. I did not have a good time at that show. I was bummed out by that show. It was the reason I haven't been to a pay. That was the reason it was 30 years in between pay-per-view appearances for me.
It is crazy. They were so hot in '97, WCW, and obviously 83 weeks of dominance, which is really like 2 years of dominance. But man, that pay-per-view, I can't even believe how much they blew it. It was just the worst.
I mean, they had a lot of people with big egos. I imagine it's very difficult to run a wrestling promotion. I think it's like a lot harder than people think it is. It's a lot harder than thinking about it in your head. Even my couple of brief forays into pro wrestling promotion, you realize that there's like issues that you don't think about when you're kind of putting it together in your head. For people that don't know, me and a couple partners of mine ran Dean 1 at WrestleMania weekend 2024, and then ran Dean 2 in front of Double A. I'm discussing this like your audience necessarily knows what the hell I'm talking about. But we promoted a couple of shows, one in WrestleMania in 2024, one in front of Double or Nothing with AEW in 2025. So I dipped my toes in that, and you realize there's a lot of shit going on that you don't necessarily even think about that goes into doing that. And there was, stuff involved working with AEW. They were great, and it was awesome and overall incredibly positive. But there were some things that was like you didn't even think about. I was like, oh, I guess now that you brought that up, that makes sense why we can't do that. But it's the balls you need to juggle to run a wrestling promotion, unbelievable. And I could tell just from, like I said, a little bit of dipping my toe in that world how insanely hard it is.
And what's going on with Dean 3? Where is it? When is it? Is it at ECW Arena?
So the ECW Arena, it's going to be during the AEW residency there. We haven't announced a specific date yet, but it's going to be they're going to be there for, I think, the end of August to the first week of September for like a couple of weeks. And we're doing a show one of those days with them. So hopefully, we're hoping to get a date relatively soon, so folks can start, if they're looking to travel to it, can plan to go. If 30% of the things I have swimming around in my insane mind come off for the show, it's going to be a memorable, insane show. So I got some ideas. I'm cooking things up in the lab, but we're not ready to announce anything yet.
Hey, but, Bryan Danielson showed up to Dean too. I mean, you never know who's going to show up.
He did. Bryan Danielson showed up. I mean, and he was backstage the whole time, watching. Be super into it. Really, really energized by the whole thing. And we had Chris Hero he helped agent the show. Hiroshi Tanahashi was backstage the entire time for Dean too. So Dustin Rhodes was backstage the entire time for Dean too, helping people do stuff. So we had some heavy hitters. At one point, it's just me in like the gorilla position of the show. Me with Tony Khan, Chris Hero, Bryan Danielson, Dustin Rhodes, and Hiroshi Tanahashi. That was the crew in the back. I was looking around like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. Like, you really had to feel like, what am I? I'm like a Make-A-Wish kid or something like that. It's like one of these things is not like the others, right? Here's like these list of Hall of Fame all-time greats, and then just my goofy ass sitting backstage.
What a crew! Jeez, what a crew! I love it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Tanahashi very into the Mad Dog Connolly Adam Priest match. He was like wildly into the dog collar match. He was like you could tell he enraptured by those guys, those two lunatics smashing each other with chains.
Love that. Did Dustin or did you bring up the Dustin of the day and talk about you working on that book?
I didn't. Tony did. I didn't bring it up. Tony brought it up. He's like, "Oh, I did this thing. Dustin of the day went into like a whole thing." He's like I said, it's wrestling encyclopedia, including an encyclopedia of obscure Death Valley driver board shit, like you would expect.
Yes.
Yeah, he talked about that. I had Dustin on the pod, so I know, and so I had talked about it. He's a very nice guy, Dustin. He really was a fun guy to be part of that. Even like I said, was backstage, kind of looking through, watching. He was giving people like pointers and coaching a little bit. So we wanted him on the show, but like I think the thing about Dustin is that his bump card is limited at this point, right? Like he's got only so many backdrops he can take at his age.
Yes.
And so obviously he was working the pay-per-view the next night. Then when you have 3 matches in 24 hours last weekend, which is pretty wild,
crazy. Yep.
It's not like he wasn't doing the Buddy Landella and showing up here with no knee pads match either, right? Like he bled in that match on the ROH pay-per-view and took some, was really bumping around in both of the matches on All In. It's just crazy if you think like, who are you double booking on this pay-per-view, right? Where you're not double booking anybody because everybody's going to be, obviously, you try to get as many people to go on the show as you can. But if you double book somebody, the guy you're double booking is guy, I don't know, how old's Dustin? 58, 57? Yep. He's the guy you're just telling him to put his boots back on and come out and work an emergency 4-way. Like, look great in it. It's like, somebody's the perfect guy to do that.
And you and Tony are probably mentioning to him, like, hey, remember when you wrestled Barbarian on WW Saturday Night in 92? Yeah. Like, that's what probably you guys are up to with him.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, that's so cool, though, like, to be in that atmosphere, and it's like, man, Tony's there, and Danielson, and Tanahashi, and Dustin, and then Hero. I mean, it's what an eclectic but awesome group there. Like you said, all Hall of Famers.
Yeah, for sure. That was really cool. And we're going to, like I said, we're going to hopefully even ramp it up even more in Philly. Because the Arizona thing came together pretty quickly. It came together very slowly and then very quickly. So, like, it was one of those things where we were always, the plan had always been all in weekend for Dean 2. And then it was kind of like we had, it was like we're probably about like 2 or so months out. We had kind of heard a ton about what was going on outside of that we were planning on it, but like any details we hadn't really gotten for a while. And eventually we were kind of like me and Matt and Eric were like, oh, well, this was a cool thing that might have happened, but it looks like it's probably not going to happen. So we'll just maybe try to do something next WrestleMania weekend or whatever. And then we finally said, oh, okay, feel like we need to start telling people the dates. Are we still on for this weekend? And then they got back to me and were like, well, things got a little complicated because the WWE put their shows, we had to move all in. Can you just do something at Double or Nothing? And I was like, it's not like in 5 weeks. The answer when they ask you is you answer yes, right? You don't say, yeah, absolutely. If they don't, can you do something on Monday? You say, yes, we can, and you figure it out.
Yes.
So they came together pretty quickly. But I was really happy with how it came out. But we have a little more lead time for Philly, so I'm hoping we can even go bigger and bolder, and we'll have, like, I think, more of a Dean style audience in Philly, Arizona. The audience was great. It was awesome. It was a lot of people who were just kind of looking for something, to come out and see this free show in front of the at this kind of mall. And it wasn't like people were traveling specifically to go see the Dean show. Well, I think people will for this one in Philly. It did for the first.
With the second one, was Danielson even on the AEW pay-per-view that weekend or no?
No. I mean,
wow, so who's just on Dean?
Yeah, he was just on Dean. That was the first time he'd appeared on any AEW broadcasting since he retired. Any AEW show this thing was on the ROH TV, obviously, but he hadn't appeared at all previous to that anywhere. So that was, and I didn't. I mean, Tony had mentioned that he was thinking about having him come by, but I didn't, because Danielson works. He often goes to the big shows as part of the office. But he hadn't been on TV since he retired, so that was the first time it was on D too. And then we obviously had no idea what he was going to say. And he said so many nice things about the show, and then so many nice things about Dean Rasmussen, and the show was a tribute to him, and he was really, 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 really generous about what he said about Dean and the Death Valley Driver Board and the effect that had on his career, and that was very cool. I mean, you didn't really expect that. Expect when you're doing what we've been doing on an internet website, to write about whatever we wanted to write about, that would actually have any sort of ripples or effects in the world. The fact that it kind of did in big ways is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey man, I was on there. I love
books. That's not like,
yeah,
that wasn't on my punch card when I started putting together mixtapes and selling them over the internet for beer money in college.
Hey, I probably have some of those. I know I do. I actually have a bunch. I know. Jeez, I was on there all the time. The great thing, though, is like Danielson appreciate that, because it's like you guys are giving some of those guys that maybe wouldn't have got the spotlight, and now looking back, it's like, man, these guys were dead on.
Yeah, I mean, we were going to, even before that, we were driving out of North Carolina, going to Omega shows, doing road reports on, when it was Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy and Shannon Moore and Shane Helms and all those guys working, armories in rural North Carolina, we would drive down from Washington, D.C. and Richmond to go to those shows, and we'd write road reports and talk up those guys. And that was like even kind of a generation before the sort of Danielson, low-key, Samoa Joe, generation of like early, ECWA, JPW, ROH guys who kind of broke out after that. We've beaten the drum we've been doing that for a long time, is trying to find folks that people don't know about. And I mean, that was what the project of both books, almost all the writing I've done for any website I've written for, and then Death Valley Drivers. Here is some cool shit you might not know about. Here's something you should watch. Here's a guy you may not have heard of, and his story and why he's cool. And that's kind of what we try to do. What we've been trying to do as a project for 30 years.
I love that. And now, just if you look at the book and even the AEW edition, there's some matches people, if they haven't seen, they need to seek out. If they have seen it, they need to watch it again. Like Cody Dustin, right? I mean, that's maybe my all-time favorite AEW match, but that's one of the ones that's in there that's got to be like, I don't know, studied or whatever you want to say. That's one to watch over and over.
Yeah, excuse me. Sorry about the dogs. Shh, quiet down. And I mean, I discovered a bunch of matches that I had even maybe watched once and not really thought about again, but I really liked. Guys that I had reevaluated matches a lot, doing the work for the book. I was talking about this earlier. Some different folks, and I came off a lot higher on Jericho after watching all of this stuff. Whereas I think that guy's some real mixed opinions on his run, and there's certainly been a lot of that stuff I have not liked. But like, man, that guy did some pretty cool shit. Like the Omega match is really good, and that's not a match on paper that particularly was interest me when it happened, or I thought I would be that interested in revisiting. The Ishii match is just such a cool idea. I wrote about that in the book. Is like the fact that they ran this match where the idea was based on an issue that Ishii had with Jericho for when they were both in war. And then they ran a match, and then Jericho let Ishii, strip skin off his chest with chops, so he's just dripping blood. I mean, that's nuts. Why do you have to do that? Why would you you got to give the guy some credit, right? There's no reason at his age and with all the things he's done in wrestling that he would go ahead and do that on TV, but he went ahead and did it. It was awesome. So stuff like that.
The game.
Yeah, the Cody Brody Lee dog collar match was something that I hadn't really revisited at all, or maybe even watched when it happened because it was the pandemic, and you're just kind of like, wrestling was sort of a bummer in a lot of places back then. But I watched that again and really enjoyed it. Talk about dog collar matches earlier. So a lot of sort of discoveries and revisiting things for me, and then also getting a chance to sort of dig back into some of the more iconic AEW matches too. And then I do a little bit of Segunda Caída, Death Valley Driver, Phil stuff in that book too, where I sort of go on little side journeys and talk about the best dog collar matches after we write about a dog collar match, or here's some cool Dump Matsumoto matches that you might like if you liked this Britt Baker match. So I got to do some of that stuff too, and that's always really fun for me.
I love random matches like Danielson Roosh. You know what I mean? Like just random stuff. I love those.
Oh yeah, Danielson had a lot to really talk about how much he loved Roosh, and how much he mentioned in the book about how when he was hurt, one of the things that when he was just looking for things to watch to try to figure out if I ever can wrestle again, what kind of style do I want to wrestle, and he talked about looking at the Death Valley Driver DVD VR 80s lucha set and watching Satanico matches and Sangre Chikara matches and all that kind of stuff, and how he kind of fell in love with that particular kind of lucha brawling style. And so how excited he was to try to work Roosh, who's the master of that, and try to work a match that's like a Sangre Chikara match from 1984. So he talked a lot. He actually went pretty into depth about how much his sort of love of that style in that book.
Wow, Danielson with a deep cut of a deep cut. Jeez, look at him, man. He's the best.
Yeah, he really is. We had some fun conversations when we were at Indeed just about like this, have you seen this weird match? Oh, let me send you this weird match. A lot of that kind of stuff.
I have a buddy of mine. He'll just be like, "Have you ever seen this?" And it'd be like some random, even it could be like a really short match either. I was like, "Yeah," it's like, "No," I was like, "I'll check it out." Like, I know, I love that type of stuff. It's not just like, "Hey, have you ever seen this TV show? Check out the show." It's like, "Have you ever seen this weird random match?" Like, have you ever seen Garvin Valentine from MSG? It's like, yes, but I'll watch it again. And then just random stuff. I love that.
Have you ever seen Garvin Valentine from the Boston Gardens?
Whoa! I randomly was just saying MSG. No, I have not seen, but I have seen the MSG one, which is
there's
awesome.
like 3 or 4 Garvin. There's like 3 or 4 Garvin Valentine matches that ended up making tape in some form or another. Even more than that. I don't think I'm actually breaking this news, but I think because it got broke a little while ago. But there were, I don't know if you know, John, did you do the DVD VR 80s sets back in the day?
I literally might still have some in my my closet over here.
So Good Helmet
Yep.
re-emerged from the mist and relaunched that project. So people are in the process of, we're going to do the sets we never did 15 years ago. So right now people are like on, in the process of, putting, there's group chats and threads. We're redoing the WWF 80s. So that's in the process of happening right now. I don't know when they're thinking they're actually going to be able to release that. But if folks are interested in that, the wrestling playlists newsletter, which is run by Charles over at PWO. I don't know if you're on that. If you're subscribed, you should be subscribed to that. If you're not, he's basically just on a sort of a project to catalog every single piece of wrestling footage that exists. And he's going through from the beginning of, he started in, looking at the earliest clips of wrestling in the 20s and goes through basically a week and is like he's in 80, I think at the end of 85 now. But he's going to be hosting that sort of project when it gets out. So folks are interested in wrestling history, they should already be subscribed to that newsletter. And that's how you'll get the sets when they come out. But so that's one of the things is we got some people footage grinding and they're doing the stuff like saying, oh yeah, did you know about this Garvin Valentine? Like I said, the Garvin Valentine match, the other Garvin Valentine matches that happened. It's like, oh, this one had a little bit of a better finish than this one, or this one went a couple minutes long. I mean, a lot of the WWF, those they just ran those matches on a circuit, right?
Yes.
So they would run, Garvin Valentine was doing, they did 10 cities or 12 cities or something like that. And, maybe 4 or 5 of them or 6 of them are taped. So a lot of what they're doing now is they're going through those and going, all right, well, if we want to put on 2 or 3 of these, which 2 or 3 of these are we going to put on? Or sometimes it's fun where you find like a shitty series that for some reason had one good match. Like every other Hercules Billy Jack Haynes match sucks. But like the one in Toronto is pretty good. It's like these guys like doing that discovery where it's like, oh, if you grab a Valentine Tito Santana match at random, it's going to be awesome. If you grab a Hercules Billy Jack Haynes match, it's going at random, it's going to stink, except for one that's really good. So that's the one. That's what these guys are doing now. They're like doing the yeoman's work of going through, watching all 8 of them to find the one that's pretty good. Like, oh, I got this, most of the time, Bob Orton and Tito Santana worked a 20-minute draw that was mostly headlocks. But for some reason, they had it cooking on this show, and this is the one that we're putting on. So that's happening, and that should, like I said, something up, I'm guessing probably early next year.
Oh, very cool. I love that. I had the original, the best of the 80s, WWF, all that stuff. It's just great stuff. I really into all that because some of the stuff is not really known or seen, or it's like, oh, I heard that match was good. Was it on MSG? Or like you said, Boston Garden, was it on Nesson? Like sometimes it's hard, or was it on Z Channel in LA? Like sometimes it's hard to find.
Yeah, there is a lot of a lot of cool. I mean, that was the first set we did, and we just didn't do it in the same in the same way that we did the other ones, right? Like it just was a lot less. It was, when we did, other Japan, we really tried to watch all the footage that was out there, and and go have somebody at least put their eyes on everything. And that's how we did other Japan. That's how we did New Japan. That's how we did All Japan. That's how we did Mexico. It really was just we had a handful of people who were on the project, and they had somebody who was watching everything. The WWF one we just kind of threw together. That was the first one we did. Will wasn't involved in that one, and we just did really just kind of like put together 100 matches without any particular organization or structure to it. So when you look back at that set, it's like, how is that there's no Terry Funk? Right? It's like, how do you? We're actually, there should have been 25 Terry Funk matches, right? Like, there's even the stuff that isn't there. It's glaring, but we're finding. So this one we're redoing this one with much more like somebody's watching everything, and we're gonna find the thing that we're gonna find the gems in there if they exist. Piper. Piper's the guy that's come. I mean, we were talking about Piper earlier, but he's the guy that in this parts of this. I'm not watching everything, but I'm kind of like dipping in. Piper's the guy where it's like, oh my God, Piper was good. Like, holy shit, he was the best guy. And I think you realize that because the shtick on Piper was always that he was a good, interview guy, but not good in the ring. And it's like, that's not true. He was actually the best guy in this promotion. Every time you watch Piper against anyone, you're like, oh, this guy's incredible. So he's the guy, the stock going up guy. The next way the Blade book's gonna have a lot more Piper in it too.
Nice, I like that. By the way, Funk and Hogan in WWF in '85 had a bunch of really good matches. Just throwing that out there.
Funk and Hogan had a bunch of really good matches, and we're gonna have that'll be way more represented too.
So did, which is crazy to say, so did Harley Race, and at his advanced age against Hogan in the mid '80s there too. Were great.
Yeah. Did you ever see? Have you ever seen like the elimination match? The one that happened.
Who the hell was it? The 3-on-3? There's 6-man.
3-on-3 elimination match. Yeah, it was. It was a Hogan, Piper, Billy Jack Haynes, Adonis, Orndorff, Hercules one. There was a couple of them. But just like I'm trying to find the one with. So trying to find the one with Race. I'm sort of looking at this as we're doing this right now. But yeah, where it's like, and that's the thing about looking at the footage is you might remember the Hogan ones, but like you might not remember the Race ones where it was, they were right. Like one-off match against somebody, or he had like, or he had like the one really good JYD one. He had a good one against Coco Ware at 87.
Wow, random.
Oh, the elimination matches for MSG elimination match: Savage, Adonis, Race, Steamboat, Piper, Junkyard Dog.
Damn. Okay. I don't remember that one. I got to see that one. Okay.
Which if folks haven't seen, is one of the great matches of the 1980s. Like it's just it's as good as it sounds on paper. But I'm looking through this. There's apparently a Hogan Piper versus Race Orndorff tag from MSG '86, which the people are writing or talking about it. Apparently, there's a like I said, Race Coco Ware, where it's like he was there for a while, and it's Harley Race, right? Like so, it's gonna be it's like even the Eddie, if he's showing up on TV wrestling a match, it's gonna be good, and so I'm really looking forward to folks getting a chance to look at the work that these guys are doing for this and seeing like we've moved far away from the book, but that's all right. We knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, of course. We were talking about great wrestling and just random. Hey, it's kind of Danielson's fault because he's bringing up random stuff. So we bring up random stuff. It's Bryan Danielson's fault.
Bryan, yeah, shame on you, Bryan.
So as far as this book, I'm going to put it up here. I should have put it up here earlier. Look at that. Look at that.
That's why you're a professional.
Look at that. Way of the Blade, So as we wind it down here, head towards the finish, Way of the Blade, obviously the AEW edition, this awesome artwork here. I love this style. Eddie Kingston on the cover. Where could everybody get the book if they want it? And give us one last push of why they should get the book.
So it's Amazon is the best place to find it. Now we did a sort of an Indiegogo pre-order thing, but that's done now. So you get it on Amazon anywhere in the world. So yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think it serves as sort of an oral history of the last, 4 or 5 years in professional wrestling, and you get a chance, I think my writing's gotten a lot better. I think it was pretty good before, but I really think I did some of the best writing of my career in this book, and you really do get a chance to hear from, some in-depth, really cool interviews from great wrestlers and great art, and so it's a good book. I really am happy with the way it turned out. It was sort of a long process to get it out there, and just thrilled that people can enjoy it now. Buy the book, and because if this book sells well, I'll get to do another one. So and I want to keep doing these because they're fun to do. So everyone buy this, so then I can do Way of the Blade 3 and Way of the Blade 4, Way of the Blade 5, all of that stuff. So, and you read the first one, right? You like the first one, right, John?
Oh, love the first one. Yes. Hey, I was a guest on your pod talking about Brett Austin too, so that was awesome. Right. Yes.
We gotta have the pod. I brought the pod back, and then I went on a summer hiatus. But there's some more recent pods that folks want to listen to. Way of the Blade podcast. I had on a cover model here, Eddie Kingston. I had him on the pod recently. I had Tony Khan on. I had Mad Dog Connolly on, and we were doing a project with a couple of buddies of mine called The Canon, where we're going to eventually try to discuss canonical professional wrestling matches. So we're currently, what if we had to assign something a canonical status? And right now we're doing the death match canon. So we've had a couple podcasts on what are canonical death matches. So that project is sort of, like I said, it's harder to do these in the summer when kids are out of school. But we did one on IW Mid-South canon. We did one on CZW canon recently. Nice. Old school canon, FMW. So that's been a fun project. We're just trying to figure out, ties in a little with the blood, but we're just trying to figure out, all right, if you had to say what IWA Mid-South death match is canonical, what would it be? So that's been fun. I've got mostly writing in the last couple months for Yahoo. There's an excerpt from this book that Yahoo posted a little over a week ago. So if you want like a taste of what this book is, the thing I wrote on Hangman Page, Bryan Danielson, is on the Yahoo website. The excerpt from that includes a lot of really cool interviews with Danielson on that match. So that's on Yahoo Uncrowned. I also just recently wrote something on Gypsy Joe, the great legendary Gypsy Joe, where I talked to Hero and Taz and Tank and Dan Wilson, who was Gypsy Joe's nephew, about they told me some cool Gypsy Joe stories. So folks aren't familiar with Gypsy Joe, or only familiar with him from the New Jack thing. This gives like sort of a real chance to really learn about sort of one of the original hardcore wrestlers, maybe the toughest wrestler in the history of pro wrestling. So I was really proud about that, how that came out. I'm trying to think of anything else I got to plug. Dean 1 is on IWTV. A lot of parts of it are on YouTube now. On the Action Wrestling YouTube site, you can see if Mad Dog Connolly, Demas, and Slim J, Adam Priest, and a lot of the stuff from Dean 1 on that. The entirety of Dean 2 is on the ROH YouTube channel, which is where Dean 3 will be when that comes out. And that's in September at the ECW Arena. Well, we don't have a date announced yet, but it's going to be early September. So folks are in the Northeast. They got to come to Dean 3. I've got, like I said, some really crazy, awesome ideas floating around in my head, and hopefully those will come off. So I think that's a lot of plugs, John.
Where could everybody find and follow you as far as socials?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Phil A. Schneider, Way of the Blade book on Instagram. I'll let him do a ton on that. But Twitter's probably the easiest way to find me, and then just kind of mostly on there. I try not to argue too much. I'm mostly just on there to go, here's this thing I wrote, you should read it. Here's this match I saw, you should watch it. That's kind of my general thing there. Either that or live tweeting WCW Vault drops, Omni Vault drops. I'm on there doing that for sure.
Great stuff.
Oh man, that's a really great headbutt by Pez Whatley. It's really what I'm out there doing. And I have something percolating for Yahoo, which is in the percolating stages. But keep an eye on Uncrowned SummerSlam week. I might have a thing coming up that is not solidified yet. But if I am able to pull off it, should be very, very cool. Sort of a multi-part interview series with a very famous wrestling figure.
Awesome. I love it.
So yeah, that's what I'm up to. But I think if folks are listening to this and haven't got the books, they should get the books. Folks aren't listening to this and haven't watched Dean 2 and Dean 1, go watch Dean 1 and Dean 2. Those are nice, digestible, awesome wrestling shows.
And of course, you have to get the Way of the Blade, the AEW edition. Phil, thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it tonight.
Yeah, anytime, John. Always love talking.